Hey everyone, it's Blake. Welcome into episode number 11 of our WWF Invasion 2001 save in TEW 9. This is Raw is War for May 28, 2001. If it felt like months and months between Judgment Day 2001 on May 27th, 2001, and Raw is War on May 28th, 2001, well, of course, that's because it was, as we took a very extended break here on the channel. As you know, the longest one we've had here on the channel since I started it, 5 years ago now. So, yeah, just lots of things. Started new jobs, new additions to the family, all this kind of stuff. And so just haven't really had a chance to play TW much at all. And so I've actually spent the past couple weeks going back through this save, rewriting all my sort of storyline notes to catch up and try to remember everything that I had, kind of in the works whenever we left off at Judgment Day at the end of last year. And now we're going to see if we can keep this thing going for a bit. So I appreciate you guys. I know some of you continue to leave comments on the channel talking about the long-awaited return and all that. Well, we're going to give this a shot. And I think at least as of right now, I've planned out the next 6 episodes. So at least I have those shows ready and pretty much good to go. So we'll see how far we can make it in this. But this is the one that we were certainly having a lot of fun with. This was one of the more anticipated series on the channel since I started it, again, several years ago. And so I want to keep this thing going because there are some big moments that I want to get to with this particular save. So if you need to go back and do a refresher, that's my probably suggestion. Go back so you can remember where we are. Usually I do kind of a reset episode. I'm not going to do that here. I'm just going to jump straight into it because, again, the episodes are there. If you want to go back and check them out, watch them on 2x speed, whatever you want to do to try to catch up and remember where we were at. But we are coming off of Judgment Day. 82 for this segment here. And if you remember, there was some big developments at Judgment Day. One, of course, was the fallout from the main event. It was Stone Cold Steve Austin successfully defending the WWF title against The Undertaker via some help from The Big Show. And so we start things off here, and JR comes right on commentary and says, everyone, this is not going to be a normal edition of Raw is War because chaos has already unfolded in the back. It started earlier today, and now things continue to get very chaotic. We see a scene in the back where The Undertaker and Kane are trying to enter the arena, but they're being forced back by the security team. They will not allow The Undertaker and Kane to get into the arena. And we can hear Taker sort of yelling about Big Show and how he's coming after Vince McMahon. Taker and Kane pissed off. They wind up kind of, heading back there and saying, don't you worry, we'll be back. And so Taker and Kane out of here, chaos everywhere. And so we immediately cut from the outside of the building to the door that separates it. And on the other side of the door, well, standing there is Kurt Angle and William Regal with another group of security. And so Angle and Regal are standing there. They've got security all surrounding them. The doors are blocked here. As we said, Taker and Kane can't get in. And, well, we know who else they're trying to keep out. That is, of course, Booker T and DDP, as they were officially jumping into the mix at Judgment Day as they attack Stone Cold Steve Austin and Kurt Angle after the main event to jumpstart the official invasion, if you will. So this gets a 71. And so Angle and Regal are, again, standing with the security team. Angle's yelling on the outside because he's heard Taker and Kane out there. He's yelling back and forth and all these things. And then we see Vince McMahon coming down the hallway here. And so Vince is yelling at someone on the phone. Vince is saying, I told you, damn it. I wanted an answer. I want to know who was in charge of the security when The Undertaker, Kane, and Jericho got out. And I want to know who was in charge and who let Booker T and DDP into my arena last night at Judgment Day. So Vince is on one, right? He's trying to get to the bottom of this. What is going on with his security teams? He's changed security teams twice now. He had a different one for Judgment Day. And yet, still, there have been these people being allowed to either get in the arena via the WCW stars or the guys that were let out of handcuffs, as we know, when it was The Undertaker, Jericho, and Kane. Rikishi found his way into the building, gave Angle the stink face in Pittsburgh, all those things. So Vince is trying to get to the bottom of this. Meanwhile, as he's getting over there, he finally makes his way to Angle and Regal. And Angle is saying, Vince, Taker and Kane, they're not getting in here. They're not getting in, Vince. And Angle just says, but where is Steve? Where is Steve? Angle wants to know where Stone Cold Steve Austin is. And Vince gets pissed off even more. I don't know, Kurt. I don't know where Steve's at. I've been trying to call him. He won't answer my calls. And so something unusual there, as Steve Austin is not here, and Vince McMahon has not heard from Austin after Judgment Day last night. And so Vince just keeps saying, I don't know where Steve's at. We've got to get to the bottom of this. I've got to call Eric Bischoff. We just need to make sure, as he looks at the whole host of security, that no one gets into this building that's not supposed to. He tells them to keep Taker and Kane out of here. He doesn't want to see Booker T, DDP, or any other WCW star walking through that door. He tells the leader of the security here, you make sure every single entrance is blocked. I don't want any of them in here because we've got some business to take care of. And so Vince picks up his phone again. He's still trying to call Austin, to no avail here. So chaos, as we said, to start this edition. And what else would you expect after the WCW stars make their presence felt for the first time in our series? 71 here for this one. All right, now we get to a big announcement. JR says, folks, if that's not enough, it's, again, going to be a very chaotic night here on Raw is War, and it could be a very chaotic couple weeks because JR reveals that we officially are starting the road to the King of the Ring. And he said, what great timing here, as everything is just kind of, all over the place. We don't know what's happening with WCW. We don't know what Vince McMahon is up to. But JR says, we now know the bracket for the King of the Ring. And he reveals the official bracket that we're going to have for the King of the Ring here. And if we look at it, this is just kind of a makeshift sort of bracket here that we could put together. But the current look at the bracket, and JR notes that Kurt Angle, because he is the defending King of the Ring, Angle is going to get an automatic bye into the quarterfinals. So Kurt Angle automatically in the quarterfinals, and he is, of course, advancing on there. But we see that who will Kurt Angle face? Well, he's going to face the winner of Jeff Hardy and William Regal, which will take place tonight. And Taz notes, well, this is clear as day, JR. We know exactly why Kurt Angle is going to face the winner of Jeff and Regal, because what that does is they've concocted a plan where Mr. Regal is going to just let Kurt Angle walk his way into the semifinals. And JR says, yeah, I have no doubt about it. They've been coming up with this plan. So basically, Angle is going to get an automatic bye into the semifinals. Elsewhere on that side of the bracket, it's Chris Jericho taking on Rhino. And then we've got Eddie Guerrero going up against the former King of the Ring winner in Billy Gunn. On the bottom part of the bracket, Edge going to take on Raven. You've got Rikishi against Hardcore Holly. You've got Christian taking on Crash Holly, which will take place tonight. And then you've got Matt Hardy versus Dean Malenko. So that is your, top 15, I guess you could say, for this particular bracket. Who's going to advance to the quarterfinals? Quarterfinals, as JR says, will take place here on Raw and SmackDown once we get there. And then the semifinals and finals will be at King of the Ring later next month. So that's your setup for the 2020 or the 2001 King of the Ring. Speaking of King of the Ring, as we said, Christian and Crash Holly in qualifier action to get to the quarterfinals, and it is Christian getting the win over Crash in 6:32. Again, I always forget the submission instead of the pinfall, but pinfall win for Christian here. He's not making Crash submit. He's going to get the pinfall after what? Interference from Hardcore Holly. We know these two started off to say miscommunication everywhere. Eventually, Hardcore turns on Crash, and now it's Hardcore costing Crash Holly the opportunity to advance in the King of the Ring. So, Christian is advanced. We did do storytelling on this one. We had to use that, of course, on one of the things here on the show always. So we used that for this one because there's a couple other matches I want to get a little more out of. But nonetheless, 54 here for this one. We'll take it for this first King of the Ring. Christian is now in the King of the Ring quarterfinals. All right, now we go backstage, and it is Vince McMahon, who is on the phone with Eric Bischoff. Kurt Angle and William Regal both there with him, but Vince on the phone with Bischoff, and Vince is just once again saying he has not yet heard from Steve Austin. And, he's telling Bischoff that they've certainly got a big problem here and they've got to figure it out. And Kurt and Regal are kind of sitting there listening intently. And Vince just says, Eric, I know I've heard everyone say all the stuff about you and how everyone's pointing a finger at you. But no one but you and I know what we're up to with our plan and the business that we have to handle. I know that you were not responsible for what's happened here over the past couple weeks, and I know you weren't responsible for what happened with Booker T and DDP showing up at Judgment Day last night. But Vince says, if there's anyone that knows about a war, Eric, it's you. And we've got to get our battle plans drawn. Vince says, I need you to come to SmackDown and we need to draw out our plans because, like it or not, Eric, the war has begun with WCW. So Vince McMahon telling Eric Bischoff he needs him to show up because they are going to draw out the battle plan for what they're going to do. And Vince says, for now, I need you to handle some of the business we've talked about, but I need you at SmackDown this week. I know you weren't able to be at Judgment Day. I know we already had some things that you had to take care of tonight, but I need you at SmackDown. And so, meanwhile, Kurt Angle's sitting beside it, and he says, Vince, tell Eric I said hello. And Vince just says, all right, Kurt, just Eric, we'll talk later. So Kurt Angle wants to make sure that Eric Bischoff knows that he cares about it. So Vince wants Eric Bischoff at SmackDown. They're going to draw up their plan for the war against WCW. Meanwhile, Vince says, we've got some other business to handle. And Vince looks over at William Regal, and Regal's still kind of looking down, dejected, because as we know, Regal lost the submission match against Chris Jericho at Judgment Day. And then Angle looks over at Regal intently. Angle gets up out of his chair and walks over and gets in Regal's face. And he says, Mr. Regal, you know what you've got to do tonight. And Angle says, you've got to go out there and beat Jeff Hardy. And when you do, you're going to face an Olympic gold medalist in the quarterfinals of the King of the Ring. And Mr. Regal, you know what you've got to do then. We've given you every opportunity, Angle says, as he looks over at Vince and kind of gives a little fist bump. We've given you every shot to keep your job, to step up to the plate, Angle says. And so, when you beat Jeff Hardy, you're going to face me in the King of the Ring, and you're going to lay down for the Olympic gold medalist because I'm going on to the semifinals, and I'm going to go on and win the King of the Ring for the second straight year, Angle says. So, Angle has laid down sort of the plan here that once Regal beats Jeff, he wants Regal to lay down for him and let Angle move on, as JR and Taz noted earlier, to the semifinals of the King of the Ring. So that is kind of your setup here. Vince still pissed about, seemingly pointing the finger at Shane. Angle wants to make sure Regal knows what he has to do tonight. 84 here for this one. All right, and then we do get to the match. And in this match, we could have done like a match angle here, but I quite honestly just forgot to put it in. But here's how this one unfolds. So, as you can see, in a decent match, Jeff Hardy defeats William Regal by disqualification. So this gets a 61 in this one, about what I probably expected from a rating standpoint. But the story here is that there is a lot of pressure on William Regal, and that's what JR and Taz are kind of pushing here on commentaries, that Regal has a lot of pressure on him. All of a sudden, there's a war with WCW. Regal's coming off the loss to Jericho. Regal's lost recently, too, to The Undertaker. Regal is not exactly in Vince's good graces right now, or Kurt Angle's, as you could tell. And so, Vince, has put a lot of pressure on Regal. So Regal comes out, and he's basically really doing anything he can. And you can see kind of the theme of the match is that Regal at every turn is trying to cheat to win because he knows what's at stake. He knows he has to win the match. But eventually, Regal pulls out the brass knuckles. Well, we know those have been used quite a bit by the Big Show, who came out and clocked The Undertaker with the brass knuckles in the Judgment Day main event. And so now Regal is using the brass knuckles here, and he hits Jeff Hardy with it behind the referee's back. But Regal sort of, is a sigh of relief there, thinking, okay, I've done it. I've just taken out Jeff. But then Regal turns around, and he doesn't realize that the referee has caught him. So the referee, your usual ref bump here in the Attitude Era, but the referee has gotten up, and he's seen Regal knock out Jeff here, basically, with the brass knuckles. And so Regal gets disqualified. So the referee has disqualified William Regal for using the brass knuckles, and Jeff Hardy is going to win by disqualification here, although has taken a bit of a hit with the Knucks. But Jeff Hardy wins by disqualification, so he advances in the King of the Ring tournament. And Regal realizes what he's done. He tries to plead with the referee. Then he corners the referee and all this, sort of threatening and all these other things. But the referee gets out of there, and Regal has lost it, both the match and perhaps his mind, as he realizes what's happened. And Jeff is going to advance, and that's where, without adding another angle here, Matt Hardy, we can use Matt. He kind of runs off Regal here, checks on his brother and all that. So Jeff Hardy's going to advance. At what cost, I'm not sure, but William Regal gets caught cheating, and Jeff is going to advance in the King of the Ring. 61 here for this one. Wonder what Kurt Angle's going to have to say about that. All right, well, we're going to find out, because we go to the back, and we just see Vince McMahon shaking his head, and we see Kurt Angle just standing up there with his Olympic gold medals around his neck, and Angle is just shaking his head, saying, Vince, what else could happen? Steve's not here. My tag team champion partner is not here. We don't know where he's at. William Regal just lost the match to Jeff Hardy, and now I've got to face Jeff in the King of the Ring. And Angle just says, what are we doing here, Vince? We've got to get something together. This isn't working. We got people outside that are trying to get in the building. You got Booker T, DDP, The Undertaker, Kane, and Vince just says, Kurt, stop. I know all of this. I already know that this is all the stuff we're dealing with. We'll deal with Mr. Regal in a few minutes. But for now, there's something else I need to handle. And when Vince says that, here comes the Big Show, who, as we know, again, played a big factor in knocking out The Undertaker to allow Austin to retain the championship, although Austin didn't seem too pleased about it. But we've talked about since the beginning of the save, Vince has sort of threatened Show with how he owes him a favor. And Vince says, thank you. Thank you for repaying that favor that you owed me. And you know why, and only you and I need to know why that is. But Vince says, sometimes in business, it can't stop there. And Vince says, so I need another favor from you tonight. And before he can continue, Show just says, hang on a second. I've done everything you've asked. I've done everything. Whether it's The Undertaker, whether it's anybody else, I've done everything you've asked. Can we please just move on from this? And that's when Vince just looks at him and says, yeah, you're right. You're right. Because you're the one sitting here dealing with a WCW invasion. You're the one sitting here missing your WWF champion and tag team champion. You're the one who just saw the commissioner lose to Jeff Hardy in the King of the Ring. And Vince is just losing it, right? He's fuming. He's talking about Shane. He's talking about all this stuff. And Kurt Angle just tries to calm Vince down here. But Vince says, I'm not taking that answer from you, damn it. You don't know what I'm feeling right now. You don't know what I'm dealing with. You're going to go out there, cash in this one more favor, Vince says, and then you can be done. But tonight, you're going to do it. And that's when Vince does the trademark line, you will do it or you're fired. And Vince says, and I'll let everyone know why you owed me a favor. And then Regal walks in. So Regal's slowly walking in here. Vince looks at him. Angle looks at him, just completely shaking his head again. And then Show looks at Regal, and Vince says, you're going to do what Mr. Regal has not been able to do. And I want you once and for all to crush Chris Jericho. Vince says, we've let him in the building because we're going to finish Jericho tonight. And so Vince wants Jericho out of here. He's going to crush Jericho. Regal couldn't do it. And so he's put Show in charge of that. So the Big Show and Chris Jericho is going to be our main event tonight on Raw is War. 76 for this one. All right, now we get to an interview here. Just Michael Cole interviewing the Dudley Boys. They come off of that big six-man tag tables match victory against X Factor at Judgment Day. And Michael Cole says, look, guys, everyone's talking about it tonight. I've got to get your thoughts. WCW, they've arrived seemingly in the WWF. We saw Booker T, DDP at Judgment Day, and the Dudleys say, just stop there, Michael Cole. We don't care about any WWF versus WCW. Bubba says, we don't care. We're focused on getting our tag team championships back. That's why We took out X Factor, and now we are setting our sights on those titles. Yes, we know what happened several weeks ago when we faced Stone Cold Steve Austin and Triple H, but they're not the tag team champions anymore. It's Stone Cold Steve Austin and Kurt Angle. And Bubba says, there's nothing I'd love more than to put Kurt Angle through a table. And Devon is just, testify and all this other stuff. So the Dudleys make it very clear. They don't care about this WWF versus WCW war. They're not focused on it. They're focused on the titles. 53 year for this one. Speaking of the Dudleys, they're going to be in action here in just a bit. But for now, we're going to get to Rhino versus K-Quick for the hardcore title. As we saw earlier, Rhino is in the King of the Ring qualifiers, so we'll see if he can advance. He's going to face Jericho coming up on SmackDown. So keep that in mind. Jericho's got a match against Big Show tonight. Then he's got to face Rhino on SmackDown in the King of the Ring qualifier. So Rhino gets the win over K-Quick, 235. Pretty much a squash here for our guy K-Quick. Defense number 6 now of the hardcore title for Rhino. So he came off of winning a 4-way match at Judgment Day. Rhino, just an absolute beast. He's getting right back into things, and he just destroys K-Quick here, 49. No chemistry between these two. That's why the rating was lower. But nonetheless, Rhino kind of setting a tone here that this guy is 7 days a week just going out and destroying anybody in his path, it seems like, with Rhino. So, again, we'll see him against Jericho on SmackDown. All right, now it's Michael Cole with Jeff Hardy, and you can tell Jeff was a little bit shaken up here, and Matt's kind of helping Jeff. The doctors have checked on him. Matt says Jeff certainly took a bit of a hit from Mr. Regal, but he didn't get all of it, Matt says. And so Jeff is going to be okay, and we're gonna rest up because he's got the biggest match potentially of his career coming up against Kurt Angle in the King of the Ring quarterfinals, and very soon. Like, that's not happening on SmackDown, but it's coming up in the next couple weeks. So Matt's just saying that's our goal right now, and Jeff just says, I've seen people like Kurt Angle. I know it's not going to be easy. I'm not an Olympic gold medalist, Jeff says. I just took a huge hit from the brass knuckles. I may not be 100%, but Jeff just sort of says, I know how to beat people like Kurt Angle. You got to beat them at their own game, Jeff says, and that's what we're going to do because I'm going to advance in the King of the Ring, and Matt's going to advance in the King of the Ring, and if we meet each other in the finals, so be it, Jeff says. And so Matt kind of, nodding his head here, and they walk off as they're going to, again, kind of get Jeff recovered here for the big quarterfinal match against Kurt Angle coming up here soon. All right, I mentioned the Dudley Boys are going to be in action. They get the win over the different combination of Right to Censor as they beat the Good Father and Val Venus in 7:29. Devon pins Val after the 3D. So, as we said, Dudley's setting their focus on the tag team titles, currently held by Austin and Angle, but just kind of giving them a win here following that win over X Factor in the tables match. So 61 here for this one. All right, now we kind of have another backstage segment, and we have, pick your interviewer here, whoever you want to throw in this, but it's kind of, again, asking the question to Rikishi and Too Cool. What do they think about this whole WCW stuff? And Rikishi's just saying, I'm not here to fight WCW. Rikishi says, we're not focused on WCW. And Rikishi says, we're focused on Kurt Angle because we are not finished with Kurt Angle. I am not finished with Kurt Angle. And so we know that Angle defeated Rikishi at Judgment Day. Angle, through some nefarious means during the match, able to get a quick roll-up on Rikishi for the win. But Rikishi's just saying he's not, just like the Dudleys, he's not worried about this WWF versus WCW thing. He's here to fight for Too Cool. And so, that's kind of his message. But then walk up Edge and Christian. And Edge and Christian just kind of mocking Rikishi and Too Cool. We know we've seen these guys in action before here recently in our save. And Edge just, kind of mocking that, Rikishi, you haven't even qualified for the King of the Ring. And he's saying, Christian's already qualified. And of course, the fun of that is that there have only been 2 qualifying matches. And so Christian's already in the tournament. Edge says he's going to be in the tournament and that he's already looked ahead and knows that if he wins and Rikishi wins, then they're going to face each other in the quarterfinals. And Edge just says, there's nothing I'd enjoy more than beating you. And perhaps Edge says, I'll give you a stink face of my own. And so, Edge and Christian, the comedic side of them, they're laughing here at their own jokes about how Edge is going to give Rikishi a stink face and all this other stuff. And of course, that's when Grandmaster Sexay and Scotty 2 Hotty kind of get up in their faces. And then Edge and Christian says, we don't want any harm here. We're just kind of letting you know that you guys suck. That's what Edge and Christian say, and then they walk away here on that. So, again, kind of continuing the theme. We're looking ahead, possible matches in the quarterfinals. Edge and Christian having some fun, with Christian having already advanced, and Edge will get the opportunity to do so here coming up soon. So 62 here for this one. All right, then we get another match here. Again, we have to put one of these on every card, and I struggled to find the right combination for this one. Initially, I think, wanted to try to do one between Molly and Terry, but you kind of need someone higher, I think, than a 40 popularity to keep kind of that pre-show note or whatever it is. Basically the fans don't care about two people who they kind of view as, pre-show workers. So I eventually went Molly and Ivory here, and I think it kind of works better for what we're about to do because I'll tell you in just a second why that is. But Molly gets the win over Ivory in 523. Remember, we have to have an eye candy match on every show. So 36 here for the segment. But really the bigger story is, throughout the match, JR is talking about how, the fallout of what happened at Judgment Day, Trish versus Lita, the number one contenders match. And we did not crown a number one contender because we saw the debut of Jazz, who came in and destroyed both of them. And, JR's bringing up how China is, out doing some media obligations for the WWF. But we know we're going to hear from China on SmackDown regarding whatever's going on. And JR also lets us know that Trish and Lita are currently recovering from potential injuries suffered in that attack by Jazz. So that's your story here as we go through this. And, of course, we know what that means. Here comes Jazz afterwards, and you can tell I actually put Terry in here. I meant to put Molly and Ivory, but Jazz comes out, and she takes it to Molly Holly right off the bat here, and then you kind of have the fun potential setup where Ivory steps up to Jazz and is trying to convince her to join the RTC and all this other stuff, but Jazz just destroys her ass too, and so Ivory's taken out, Molly's taken out, so now in a span of really 24 hours, Jazz has taken out Trish Stratus, Lita, Molly, and now Ivory. So Jazz immediately coming in, making her presence felt here in the WWF. So again, the numbers issue with the women's division right now is a bit of a problem, but we've got a way to solve that, and I think we will be able to do that here pretty soon. So, all right, and now we get to Michael Cole with Chris Jericho, and it's the same theme. Cole's just saying, Chris, I think there's a lot you probably have to say, knowing that you're having this match tonight against the Big Show. And Cole just says, I think people have started to connect the dots. You were attacked not long ago here in the WWF by someone who hits you in the back of the head, and you went into that match at Judgment Day against William Regal, basically not 100%. You still won the match. But now, after you saw the Big Show come out and use the brass knuckles against The Undertaker, are you thinking the same thing everyone else is thinking, Michael Cole? So it takes Michael Cole a minute to get to the punchline here, but Jericho says, Cole, of course, I know that it was the Big Show who attacked me now. I know that he used those same brass knuckles he used on The Undertaker to knock me out, to try to keep me out of the match against William Regal, but he didn't do it, and I went in and did exactly what I said I was going to do. I made William Regal tap out. Cole then says, well, Chris, I've got to quickly ask you, but before we talk about what are your thoughts? WCW, Booker T, DDP, and Jericho just says, I'm not fighting for the WWF against WCW. I'm not fighting for WCW against the WWF. Jericho says, all I'm fighting for is Chris Jericho, and tonight I'm going to get a little bit of that payback on the Big Show, and then it's going to be even sweeter when I take out the Big Show and there's no one around to help Kurt Angle weasel his way into the King of the Ring for a second straight year. And Jericho says, I'm going to be the person to dethrone Kurt Angle, and then we'll talk about WWF versus WCW, Jericho says. So, 74 for this segment, and in our main event, did not do as well as I thought it would. I didn't think it'd be an 80 or anything, but I was like, come on, at least give me like a 75 or something. Not so great. 69, nice rating for this one, but it is Chris Jericho getting the win over the Big Show after what? Well, intentional disqualification from the Big Show. Come on, this is the attitude here. You're not going to clean finish in every match. Come on now. I can't possibly do that. But it is Jericho winning the match. And so it's kind of one of those where we play up the theme of Jericho actually is able to get sort of an upper hand on the Big Show at one point, but then eventually it's Big Show just going for it all here, and he intentionally gets himself disqualified. He takes out Jericho, and so basically the story here is that Show, goes out, he choke slams Jericho through the announce table, and so he eventually gets disqualified. The referee throws it out. Great chemistry here. That's notable between Jericho and Show, even though this match didn't do as well. I'm going to assume, let's see what that could be. Jericho has low morale and lack of associated storyline. So again, I've got to update the storylines. It's been that long, but the low experience for the commentary, that was something too. But Jericho penalized for the low morale. Again, it's kind of something where we'll get that up and it'll do a little bit better. I told you guys too, and you probably don't remember this because it's been months, but there was something where we gave a bit of a pep talk or some kind of, you had the press conference questions after Judgment Day. That's kind of a new thing in TEW IX, right? So the press conference questions, I apparently didn't answer them the best, and so some people got pissed. And I think Jericho may have been one of those people. So we got to get his morale up. But again, the bigger story is that he's been sent through an announce table. And so after the match, well, Joe picks up Jericho again. He's not done. And who comes out? Oh, boy. Another choke slam from the Big Show. And then here comes Rhino. So Show picks up Jericho again, but before he can do any more damage, here comes Rhino, who just hits the gore on Chris Jericho. So Jericho's been chokeslammed multiple times. The gore by Rhino takes him out. And so Jericho is left down and out here. Of course, there's no Taker, there's no Kane. Those three have kind of been connected a little bit over the past just because of this fight against Vince, Austin, and Angle. But now, there's no Taker, there's no Kane. They can't get in the building. So Jericho's out here with this one. And so Rhino hits the gore. And like I said, that's your setup for your King of the Ring qualifier on SmackDown. So Jericho will not be 100%. Maybe it might not be 50% for that match on this one. So takes him out. Rhino heads out. Big Show goes to leave. 80 for this one. But things are about to pick up here, folks. There's a lot to come in this segment. Big Show has done the damage. Here comes Vince McMahon. Here comes Kurt Angle. And so they make their way into the ring, and Vince calls Big Show into the ring. He wants everyone to know that the Big Show has been a great, great soldier here, and that he has a special reward coming for the Big Show on SmackDown based on getting the job done, as Vince says, because that's what this is all about. It's about getting the job done. And so Vince says, and you better believe the WWF is going to get the job done because I am officially declaring war on WCW. But before Vince can continue, there is some commotion. And we look over at the announce desk, and it's Jim Ross and JR saying, wait a second, folks. I'm here. I'm getting something from the back here. I'm getting something. Something's going on in the back. And so Vince has talked about how he's just declared war on WCW. And then Vince says, okay, we're gonna put it on the screen. And you can see Angle looking over, and he's seeing, that Vince and Taz are doing something here. Vince has not realized it yet. But then on the screen, what do we see? Well, we see a camera back in the parking lot. And the camera is there, and who do we see? It's Booker T and DDP, who have arrived at the building. So they've arrived at the building. And so Vince realizes, he says, keep them out, damn it. Keep them out of the building. And so Vince is just yelling, and so crowds, going wild here. They see Booker and DDP. They're walking up, and the security is keeping them out and all this other stuff. So Vince is just yelling, keep them out, keep them out. But then what happens? The glass shatters. Here comes Stone Cold Steve Austin. And so Austin is walking down, power walk style. This guy has something on his mind. They've had no idea where Austin's at. Vince hasn't heard from Austin. Angle hasn't heard from Austin. But here comes Stone Cold Steve Austin. And Vince comes in. Angle tries to give him a hug. Remember, Big Show's still standing over here by Vince. So Vince is standing there trying to figure out where has Austin been. Austin comes in. Angle tries to give him a hug. Austin just shoves Angle out of the way. And he goes over and grabs the microphone from Vince McMahon. And Austin just says, Booker T, DDP, I'm coming out there to fight your ass right now. And that's when Austin just kind of says, as he looks at the Big Show, And Austin just berates the Big Show here and says, you take your big ass and you get out of here. Me and my tag team partner, Kurt Angle, are going out to the parking lot and we're going to stomp a mud hole in Booker T and DDP. And so Austin, making it clear, he doesn't need any help from the Big Show. He doesn't need help from anybody in the locker room. Austin says, me and Kurt Angle are going out and we're going out to fight. And Vince is trying to talk Austin down here saying, Steve, no, that's not a... And then Austin just grabs Angle and pulls him with him. And so now they're headed to the parking lot. Angle's looking around at Vince saying, Vince, what do I do? And Austin's telling Angle, you get your ass to the parking lot. We're going out there to fight Booker T and DDP. And so Austin goes out with Kurt Angle, and we're following these guys. They are on a beeline to the parking lot. And, well, what happens? 96 here for this segment. And so we get out there, and it's go time. We've just got a full-on brawl. Austin and Kurt Angle are brawling with Booker T and DDP. The security's out there trying to get between these guys. It's not working because we got a full-on brawl. WWF, WCW here. Austin, Booker, Angle, DDP, they're going at it in the parking lot. But it's worth noting that Austin and Angle and Booker and DDP start brawling, and, well, it gets so chaotic that they brawl their way back into the arena. So they brawled around, they brawl into an entrance. These guys now are brawling down through the crowd, and so they brawl all the way to the arena. And, well, that's notable because, why? The security is following them as they're brawling through the arena and coming back into the arena. So the security is following them, trying to stop this, but they just can't. These four guys are going at it. They're brawling everywhere. And by that point, Vince McMahon and the Big Show have already left the ring because they've gone to the back to try to figure out what's going on. But we're back in the ring, and it's Austin, it's Angle, it's Booker, and DDP. So brawling everywhere still. Security's trying to stay between them. It's not happening. And so, in the meantime, what does that potentially allow? Well, because the security has left the exits, well, guess what? Taker and Kane are back, which, of course, they likely never left. So the Undertaker and Kane now come down as well through that same place that we saw these guys brawl from. And so, after Austin and Angle get the upper hand, Taker and Kane have returned, and they attack Austin and Angle here. And so, they are taking out Austin and Angle. Booker and DDP are still there, but the security and police have no idea what to do because there's chaos everywhere. And so, Booker and DDP are still there. Austin, as we said, and Angle are taking a beating from Taker and Kane. And then, after that happens, Taker and Kane kind of give a little bit of a stare down to Booker and DDP, who realize they probably should get out of there. And so, they're out of there now after the brawl with Austin and Angle. Taker and Kane have stared them down, but Taker and Kane have also gotten the upper hand on Austin and Angle. So an 85 here for this one. I know, chaos everywhere, but it's the invasion. It's going to be the norm here. So now that we've got Booker and DDP getting out of there unscathed because the security is focused way more on the chaos that's going on with the other guys, they're out of there. Taker and Kane standing tall. 85 for this one. That's when we go to we kind of see in the back that Vince is watching this and has realized what has happened, right? All of a sudden, they're going back out there. The fight has been taken back around the other side of the arena into the actual arena. And so Vince is ranting, and he's just saying, I am getting out of here. I can't. We've got to do something. He's ranting about Shane McMahon and how he's going to finish Shane, one of the biggest mistakes of his life. He's going to finish Shane once and for all. He's not doing this anymore. He's going to crush WCW. So Vince is just ranting about all this as the cameras are sort of following him here as Vince is getting out of the arena. He's got his limo, and he's getting out of there. We don't know where the hell the Big Show's at, but Vince is out of there. But before he gets into the limo, Vince receives a call. And Vince just says, what do you want, damn it? And Vince just says, I told you I had to have a name. I've got too much going on right now. Give me the name right now. And Vince just pauses and he says, wait a second. That can't be right. That cannot be right. He says, are you're sure about this? That cannot be the name. And Vince just pauses, and we can tell that Vince just basically stares into space here as he doesn't say anything on the phone. And then all of a sudden Vince says again, you're telling me he's the one who let Jericho, Taker, Kane out of the handcuffs. He's the person who got to the other security team with Booker T and DDP getting into my arena last night at Judgment Day. You're telling me it was him. And Vince just says, all right, that's all I needed to know. And so Vince puts his phone up, and his face turns from the blank stare into pure anger as Vince gets into his limo and it drives away. So, Vince McMahon has figured out the name. Who is it? Who was the person that perhaps orchestrated this whole security breach for Vince McMahon over the past couple weeks? We will perhaps find out soon enough. 78 for the end segment here. 78 for the show. We gained popularity in 11 regions. Pretty good show overall. I thought sort of, again, the comeback show here. We had a lot of angles because, well, you better get used to it. Remember, too, the product is that 40% is what it wants from matches. So we usually, our shows are pretty angle heavy. But a lot going on here. But I told you guys from the beginning there would be a lot going on if we were going to properly get this invasion going the way we wanted to. Big developments as Taker and Kane take out Austin and Angle, Booker and DDP brawling with Austin and Angle. Vince apparently knows the name now of the person who orchestrated this big security breach that allowed all these guys to get the upper hand on his guys recently. And so a lot going on now as we head towards not just the King of the Ring, but also a pretty big SmackDown coming up. So there was your show, 78 for this one. Let's see what we need to get to with the other stuff before we wrap up. Financial report. I skipped it. Well, I didn't mean to skip it, but I'm sure we made a lot of money. That's usually the case. Popularity, not a lot to note here on that. All right, that's it, and we'll get to see what else we need to get to before we wrap up. All right, so that was Raw. Positive show. Again, wasn't our best rating, but hey, we're coming off a big pay-per-view, and a lot was happening, of course, on that show to move the stories forward. Joey Styles winning an award, best play-by-play commentator. All right, Jim Ross may have something to say about that with Joey Styles. All right. Look at our mail here. Time to heal. Oh, Rhino. We were just bragging about how Rhino, 7 days a week, is out here goring people. Well, he says he's feeling the effects of a grueling recent schedule and asks that you take into account when... Well, apologies, Rhino. You got a big match coming up on SmackDown against Jericho. So we'll see what happens there. If Rhino makes his way through the King of the Ring, that grueling schedule is going to be a little bit tougher, perhaps. So, all right, Raw gets a 6.28. Incredible rating. 4.7 million viewers. So, all right, there you go, guys. That was Raw, and we will have SmackDown coming up on the next episode. Like I said, I know it's been a while, but hopefully some of you guys will still enjoy the save moving forward. I've also, just like I've done with this one, I've kind of gone back and tried to get sort of a feel of some other stuff we'll try to do on the channel as well for those of you who maybe just aren't as into the Invasion stuff and you want a different sort of save. We've usually had a couple rotating at the same time on the channel. I've thought about finding ways to bring that 1992 save over from TEW 2020 to TEW IX. I have an idea for how to do that. So that may be something we consider doing. I know people have asked about, are we going to do another C-verse save the way we did with TCW in 2020? I love that save so much. I wish there was a way I could just bring that one over too. I don't know if people will necessarily want it to continue just in the TEW 2020 game world, but if you do, let me know, because I've also started going back and kind of making my notes on that. That's probably one of my favorite saves we've ever done. Maybe my favorite save we've ever done on the channel outside of that WWE 2021 save we did that went over 100 episodes. But let me know what else you'd like to see, any new saves, any fun stuff like that. Again, guys, hope you're all doing well. I appreciate you watching as always. Hit that subscribe button, hit the like button as well. Helps out the channel. And let me know your thoughts on this edition of Raw, the fallout from Judgment Day, and on the next episode of our WWF Invasion 2001 save. It will be a must-see edition of SmackDown on the road to King of the Ring.